Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome our three special guests, the Archbishop of Perth, that's Timothy Costello, also the Most Reverend Donald Stockton. He's the Auxiliary Bishop of Perth. He's also the Chairman of the LifeLink. Dr. Tim McDonald, the Executive Director of Catholic Education. Dr. Deborah Sace, Director of Religious Education. We have an apology from our parish priest, Father Aloysius Leon. He unfortunately was double booked. But hopefully at 11, when we move over to the parish centre, we may get to meet him. Hopefully he may be able to attend then. Okay, so we hope you enjoyed today. Without further ado, I'm going to ask the Archbishop to commence his address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DiCarlo, and welcome everybody to what we're really calling the pre-launch day for LifeLink Day for 2015. My name is Archbishop Tim Costello. I'm the Archbishop here in Perth, and together with Bishop Sproxton, we're the leaders, I guess you might say, of the Catholic Church here in Western Australia, or at least in Perth and in the big surrounding areas around Perth. And as Mr. DiCarlo said, Bishop Sproxton is a very significant figure here today because he's actually the chairman of LifeLink, and so he oversees all the work that we do in LifeLink. So I just wanted to repeat the words of welcome that you've just received, and to say, for me as the Archbishop, it's fantastic to be standing up here and seeing so many people gathered together for what really is a very important occasion. So there are a couple of sort of important things I need to do right at the start, and the first is to do something that we often do, perhaps nearly always do, whenever we gather, and that is to acknowledge the Aboriginal ancestors and the Aboriginal people of this land. So I would like to begin this morning then by acknowledging the Noongar people and to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and future, and acknowledge their ongoing spiritual connection to this country. And having made that acknowledgement, I think we also need to just begin by a prayer. We are a Catholic community. We know that the Lord Jesus is at the heart of our community, and we really don't do anything without making sure that we have our minds and our hearts, the eyes of our minds and our hearts fixed on Him. So let's begin with the sign of the cross in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You can see the prayer on the screen. It's a prayer for charity, so we might pray it together. God of mercy and compassion, we praise you for your goodness. May your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Fill us with the spirit of loving service as we recognize in those we meet the face of Jesus, your Son. Through the generous work of our LifeLink welfare agencies, may burdens be lifted from the shoulders of your people, and may they feel the warmth of your kindness and love. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The people who have put a lot of hard work into organising our get-together this morning have asked me just to spend a few minutes, I guess we might say, setting the scene for why we're here. So I'm not going to talk for too long, but I did just want to make a couple of points, and one of them comes out of the prayer that we've just said, where we talked about seeing the face of Jesus in people in need. Because LifeLink Day is really about all of us as a community of people and as people who belong to the Catholic education system and to the Catholic community, making sure that we don't just turn our eyes in on each other and worry about our own needs. They're very important and we have to look after them. But we've also got the opportunity not just to sort of look inwards, but to look outwards and see who the people are, especially in our own society, in our own neighbourhoods, in our own city, who might need our help, and then ask what we can do about it. But to talk about that just very briefly, I just wanted to ask a question first of all. I think it's a question most of you would know the answer to, so we might get you all to call out the answer together. If I were to ask you what the name of our present Pope is, what would you say? I don't know that everyone was all that convinced about that. Let me try that one again. If I were to ask what the name of our present Pope is, you would say his name is Pope? Very good. And does anybody know why he chose the name Francis? Because, you know, before he was Pope, when he was the Archbishop in Argentina, his name was George. Because it's the tradition when a man becomes Pope, he takes on a new name. So he did decide to take the name Francis because he was very fond of one of the great saints in the church called St. Francis. But there's been more than one St. Francis. Does anyone know where the particular St. Francis that the Pope liked so much, anyone know where he comes from originally? I have to give you a clue, I think. The name of the town, it's a town in Italy and it starts with the letter A. Yes. Well done, Francis of Assisi. I'll tell you why the Pope chose the name Francis. This is what they tell us. None of us were there, of course, in the meeting where he was elected, but apparently as the votes were being counted and they could see, and he could see, that it looked like he was going to end up being the Pope, a cardinal who was sitting next to him leaned over and whispered to him, "It looks like you're going to become the next Pope. Don't forget the poor." And it was that suggestion that put into the mind of the Pope that he would take the name Francis because St. Francis was very focused on helping people who were poor. And I just want to tell you a very short story about St. Francis because I think it's a really interesting story. He was a young man. He'd left school, so he was like an older teenager, we'd say these days. Came from a pretty well-off family. He certainly knew how to enjoy himself. He spent a lot of his time going to parties and getting involved in all of that sort of stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But then there was a war, and he had to go off and fight in the war. And when he came back from the war, he was changed. And he was still the same person, but he kind of thought about things a little bit more deeply. So instead of just thinking about having a good time and where he could go next to the next party, he started thinking about what's really important in life. And one of the things he started to think about was the fact that although he was pretty rich, his family was anyway, there were a lot of people who weren't. And then one day, a really important thing happened to him. He was out in the countryside and he saw in the distance a man who had leprosy. Now, in those days, leprosy was a very bad disease, a very painful disease, and a disease that kind of disfigured people. They got sores and lesions and all sorts of things all over their body. So they were quite frightening to look at. And in those days, the disease was thought to be very contagious. So everybody kept away from them. Everybody was frightened of them. And in fact, sometimes they had to carry a little bell and ring the bell so that they'd warn everybody that they were coming so that people could run away. So Francis saw this leper, and up until then, he would have always run away himself. But something happened to him, and I think it was the Spirit of Jesus at work in him. He was able to see beyond the disfigurement and the suffering and all of that, and see in that person someone who was in need, someone who needed some help. And you know what he did? He went up to the man, he threw his arms around him, he gave him a great big hug, and then he took off his really good clothes, his cloak that he was wearing, and wrapped it around the leper. And later, when he thought about this and talked about this, he talked about the fact that he had begun to realize that in that leper, in that poor, suffering man, he could see the presence of Jesus. That Jesus was there in that man asking Francis to help. And so Francis responded to that, and he did what he could do. And what he could do, first of all, was to show this man that he was no longer frightened of him, that he didn't want to push him away, that he didn't want to run away from him in disgust, but that he wanted to show him that somebody cared. And then, beyond just showing that he cared by giving him a big hug, he wanted to do something practical for him, so he took off his rich, expensive cloak and wrapped it around this man who would have just been dressed in rags. Now, that was the first time that Francis had done anything like that, but from then on, keeping his eyes open and on the lookout for people in need and trying to do whatever he could to help them became the main thing that he decided to do with his life. And so you can see why when the Archbishop George could see that he was going to become Pope, and the cardinal next to him leaned over and said, "If you become Pope, don't forget the poor," you can see why Archbishop George thought, well, I think this is a sign from God. He wants me to be Pope. He wants me to be a Pope that has a heart for the poor, and the best person whose name I could take would be Francis of Assisi. So that's why he's now Pope Francis. I wanted to share that story with you because I think that kind of captures, really, the spirit of LifeLink Day. And what I wanted to ask each one of you, and it's not just the students here from our schools, but it's your principals, your RECs, the people who've come with you, I want to ask you all, if you're ready to do it, to think about committing yourselves to be the kind of people who have eyes that are open and on the lookout for people in need. That you've got ears that are kind of tuned in to hear people when they ask for help. And sometimes they won't ask for help in obvious ways. Maybe they won't even say anything, but just their presence when you come across them will make you realize that they need help. Sometimes people ask for help by not asking for help because they're too embarrassed to ask for help. So you've got to have ears that are kind of tuned into all the different ways that people ask for help. So eyes that are ready, open and ready to look out for people in need, ears that are open and ready to hear people in all the ways they ask for help. But you know, the most important thing, as well as those two, you've got to have something else. And the other thing you've got to have is a heart that wants to help. Pope Francis, we know as we watch him go about his day-to-day life, certainly has those eyes, he has those ears, and he certainly has that heart. So did St. Francis. And I suspect that many of you already have those eyes and those ears and that kind of heart. And if you haven't, I think it's kind of there within you, just being asking to be tapped into. So that's my job today, is to tap into that deep desire you have, because you're generous people. You're willing to help, and LifeLink Day is all about asking you to really get organised and to help. So that's probably enough just to set the scene. And what I want to do now is ask you to watch a bit of a video. LifeLink is an organisation here in the Archdiocese which has a whole lot of smaller organisations which all try to help people in need. And this little video will help you to understand some of the things that LifeLink does. Now, I'm in it as well, so don't get confused if you think, why is he sitting there when he should be on the screen, or vice versa. But listening to me is not the most important part. Learning about the different agencies is the most important part. So it goes for about 10 minutes, I think. So if you concentrate, I think you'll come away with a really good sense of the kinds of things that I'm asking you to help us to keep going here in our Archdiocese.
Welcome everybody. LifeLink was established by the Archdiocese of Perth in 1994 as the unifying name under which the many welfare and social service agencies established or supported by the Church would be funded and promoted. A number of our agencies have served people in need within communities throughout Western Australia for more than 30 years and are well known. Organisations such as Centrecare, Identity WA and Centrecare Employment and Training. The Shopfront, Day Dawn and Emmaus community organisations were established more recently to meet emerging needs identified within the community. Each agency or service, funded or supported through LifeLink, represents an essential part of the Church's mission to reach out to those in need and in doing so, express faith in a direct and tangible manner. As you all know, as Catholics, we believe that it is through service to others that we see and experience the true face of Jesus. Pope Francis expressed this when he said, "It is not only in what we believe and what we say, but in what we do, that we come to fully know and understand the message of love which Jesus brought to the world." Just as Jesus walked with and reached out to the poor, the lonely, the isolated and the abused, we too are called upon to give concrete expression to our faith through our active service to others. Through the wonderful work of our LifeLink agencies, we bear witness to and are a vital part of engaging with people who reach out to us for help. I hope you enjoy this informational video.
LifeLink is not a welfare organisation, it is the fundraising and promotional arm for the many welfare agencies and services established by the Archdiocese of Perth. LifeLink currently provides funding support to the following agencies and organisations established or supported by the Church: Catholic Ministry for people who are deaf or hearing impaired, Catholic Outreach, Centrecare Employment and Training, Centrecare Incorporated, Juraminda, Day Dawn Advocacy Centre, Emmanuel Centre, Emmaus Community, Identity WA, Samaritan Projects, The Shopfront.
Whilst it may not always be obvious, there are thousands of people who desperately need our help right here in Perth and throughout WA.
LifeLink Catholic caring agencies reach out to more than 34,000 Western Australian families and individuals in need each year. By providing services and respite care to individuals, families and children with physical or intellectual disability. By offering safe refuge and assistance for women and children escaping domestic abuse or violence. Providing emergency housing, skills training for the unemployed, food and support for the homeless, and caring homes for people battling mental health conditions.
LifeLink impacts positively in the lives of ordinary Western Australians each and every day. I'd like to share with you now the work of just 3 of our agencies. They are examples of what can and is being achieved as a direct result of your generosity.
The Shopfront started in 2001. I went to see Archbishop Hickey about the problem we had with all the homeless people and looking for help. And so he told me, why don't you go and start a Shopfront? So the Shopfront first is a drop-in centre, and they get lovely volunteers who are warm and welcoming to greet them. But it's also a referral. So also then if you're homeless or you're looking for assistance, the Shopfront networks with a wide group of people so that they can provide emergency assistance for people who are in need. Last year, 25,000 people came through Shopfront. People can help by donating to Shopfront financially. Other people may say, look, we'd like to help with blankets or canned drives. So people can help in many ways, and all of it is really, really appreciated. Most recently of someone, a lady that we were able to help who needed some assistance for Christmas presents, and just seeing that family and the joy and the love that they experienced by receiving the gifts of Christmas presents. And then her children were so excited when I went to see them. Oh, she's come with gifts. And they asked me, please eat with us, please share with us. Thank you for the love you've shown us. And that to me is repeated again and again to all these people who come to receive a touch of love. I think it's really important to recognise the amazing work that all our parishes do to support Shopfront. Most of our volunteers come directly from the parishes. They give up their time to come and support those who are in need. And without the parishes and the support from our parishes, Shopfront would not be the warm, welcoming and caring place it is.
Centacare Employment and Training was established in 1976. We seek to assist the most disadvantaged people in our community. We work with a lot of migrants, with a lot of culturally and linguistically diverse people. We work with youth at risk and we work with people with disabilities. Centacare delivers two different types of programs. The first one is the Skills for Education and Employment program. This program delivers services to the culturally and linguistic diverse community. And the other side of the organisation is vocational education training, which looks at industry-specific courses. Centacare assists between 1,000 and 1,500 students per year. Of those students, 1,200 people would do the Skills for Education and Training program, and the other 300 or so do the VET programs, which is the Vocational Education and Training programs. Recent changes in government funding have increased student fees. So for the first time ever, we've actually had to turn students away because they can't afford the fees. Donating through LifeLink will assist these students to help pay their fees and allow them to continue on and do the training that they've come to us for. Centacare is a warm and inclusive environment. We've recently developed a volunteer program where students who've done a course with us have come back and volunteered. It's quite a structured program. They get training and it allows them to go back into the classroom and to assist the people that they were once in that same classroom. And when they come back into the classroom, they can share their experiences and help these people achieve what they have achieved in the community.
Emmaus started in 1996 when I was working in a crisis unit. People were coming into the crisis unit and were coming back to the crisis unit constantly. I prayed and asked the Lord to give us a property where we could have long-term independent community living. The benefits of community living are that people in the long term become family. Our mission statement is that every person created by God deserves to love and be loved, to be respected and to be taken seriously. This is what we strive for, especially with people who live with mental health issues. Our basis is the Jesus message. It's simple, yet radical. It's about love. If our community grows, it will be in love. It's not for profit, it's for the love of our brothers and sisters. If Emmaus didn't exist, I guess the people would be living in hostels. The difference between a hostel and Emmaus is a hostel is accommodation. We're here, it's a home, and that's what we're striving for anyway. If I had a message regarding how people should treat people with mental health issues, it's the same as treating someone with diabetes or cancer. So the message would be that we are all connected, we are all brothers and sisters, and love. Love is the message. I can't even tell you how strongly I feel and this community feels about this message. People can support us by supporting LifeLink because we're part of a web of agencies that help our brothers and sisters. And if people feel in their heart, how can I do this? And I want to do something here, support LifeLink because it does go straight to the source. Believe me, and it has helped in so many ways here, and other agencies. I'm friends with other agencies, and it helps many people.
Each year, LifeLink supported agencies deliver more than $50 million of professional programs, caring services, qualified personnel and resources for the benefit of the Western Australian community.
Thankfully, much of this funding is provided through various state and federal government grants and service contracts. However, to ensure our agencies are appropriately funded, the Church, through LifeLink, provides more than $1.2 million in direct funding each and every year. In addition to the substantial assistance the Church already provides with buildings and properties utilised by these welfare agencies. LifeLink's mission, its purpose, is to raise this required $1.2 million through my annual fundraising appeals and with the enthusiastic support of Catholic schools in this Archdiocese on LifeLink Day.
More information about LifeLink, photos, articles and teaching resources are now available on our new website. Please visit us at www.lifelink.com.au.
Thank you for taking the time to learn more about LifeLink and the work of our social service agencies. It's up to all of us to help make a difference. Let us reach out with generosity, with compassion and with love when someone asks us for help.
Well, I don't know about you, but that's the second time I've watched this DVD now, and it makes me feel proud to be a part of the Catholic community here in Perth, because these people who work in LifeLink are supported by all of us, and so all of us together are part of this fantastic effort, really, in reaching out to so many people. And just by the very fact that you either are a student in a Catholic school or are working in a Catholic school means you are part of the Catholic community. And so you too, I think, should feel proud of what your community is able to do for the wider community here in Perth. When this LifeLink for Catholic Schools Day, or LifeLink Day for Catholic Schools initiative was first introduced back in 1999, a long time ago, it had an original purpose, and that purpose really hasn't changed. There are 4 things that we've been hoping to achieve, and the first is just to share information on how we as a church respond to people in need within our community. And that's the purpose of the video, it's the purpose of what we're doing here this morning, just to let people in on this great secret. The second is to try and get in touch with you, the young people in our schools, to remind you that it is an important part of our faith that we do reach out to people in need. We can't close in on ourselves. As I said earlier, we've got to be looking out beyond ourselves to those in need. It's also to share some information with you about the specific things that some of our LifeLink agencies do and the way in which they help so many thousands of people here in Western Australia each year. And then the last thing is to make a plea to you, really, to ask you to see what you can do to get involved in this and make a practical demonstration of your faith. And when I talk about that last point, I guess what I'm really talking about is by asking students in our schools, together with the support of your teachers and the other people who are involved in the life of the school, to organise a special fundraising event for LifeLink Day. So in your own local community, to organise something, and it's up to you to come up with some ideas, although we've got a very important suggestion to make, so that you can contribute to the effort to raise some money so that we can manage to keep places like the Emmaus community and centre care training and those kinds of places, shop front and so on, to keep those places open and meeting the needs of people. I'd have to say, I've only been the Archbishop here for 3 years, but in the 3 years that I've been here, I've become aware of just how generous the whole Archdiocese has been, and in a special way, really, our Catholic school community has been in raising money to help us. So I think LifeLink Day has proven to be a really outstanding success. Not only has the good news, and it is good news, about what the Church is doing in our society been shared with people, but also a lot of money has been raised. In fact, Mr. Mendez tells me that since this initiative started, just through the contributions of the schools, more than $1.2 million, that's a lot of money, more than $1.2 million has been raised through all the different fundraising activities that schools have organised over the years. So in a way, that's kind of the history. Now, what about today. I want to talk just very briefly about LifeLink Day for 2015. You may not be aware, and I should have mentioned it at the start, but this function, this activity that we're involved in now is actually being filmed. And it will go out to all of our schools, those schools who are here and those schools who couldn't be here, so that on Wednesday the 3rd of June, unless the school decides it needs to choose another day, we will have the official launch of LifeLink Day. So while I'm talking to all of you gathered here in the hall this morning, in a sense, I'm also talking to everybody who's watching this DVD in your own school communities. What I'm doing is asking your teachers and the other staff in your schools to share with you and with your friends in the schools the news about LifeLink and discuss why it is important that we should reach out and help other people. It is part of our faith. It's part of being a Christian, that we don't just look after ourselves, but that we look after other people. This year, so this is a bit of a first, for the very first time, I've got a special request to make of each primary school in the Archdiocese. The little slogan that we're going to use is "Link Up on LifeLink Day." Now, I didn't come up with that. If you think it's a bit corny, it's not my fault. If you think it's brilliant, well, then I will take credit for it. But the little motto for this year is "Link Up on LifeLink Day." Now, as you can see on the screen, there's a very attractive little paper chain there. I actually have one here that I can demonstrate, because it's always good to see these things. I'd like to say I spent hours making this myself. I didn't. Mr. Mendez organised it for me. He obviously has nothing better to do with his time than to make paper chains at home. But this is the kind of idea that we're putting to all of our schools this year. What we're asking is that each class makes its own LifeLink chain, as long as you like, and then you all get together, maybe in the school oval, maybe in a hall like this, and you link all of those chains together and create your Link Up for LifeLink symbol for 2015. And what we're hoping is that for you, and for everybody who hears about this, it will be a kind of a concrete sign, if you like, of your desire to join together to help people in need. And to remind us that we're all part of the one Catholic family in Catholic education who's doing this right across all of our schools. So while you're doing it in your school, the school down the road, the Catholic school in the next suburb, will be doing the same again. Who knows? In another year or two, we might even see whether we can get all of those chains and link them together somewhere, maybe down in Langley Park or something like that. We haven't organised that for this year, but we'll see how we go. So I'll be interested to know how long your chain ends up being. And so you'll need to have a tape measure or some fancy way of measuring it and letting us know. And Bishop Sproxton and I would be very keen to get some photos of the school community with its LifeLink chain that you can send in to us so that we can have a look and sort of share in the excitement, and we'll make sure those photos end up on our LifeLink webpage. So that's the idea. It's a pretty simple idea in one sense, but I think what's behind it is this idea that it's when we work together and when we link up our efforts together, then we can really achieve something pretty special. When you arrived this morning, and I see a few of these intriguing looking triangular boxes around the hall, when you arrived this morning, you were provided with a special LifeLink Day folder and a number of posters that are inside those cardboard boxes. And we're going to send the same material to those schools who for some reason weren't able to join us this morning. There are lots of resources for your teachers and for you to help you understand what LifeLink is all about, posters to put up around the school. And in a way, I guess I'm asking particularly those who are here this morning, but also all those watching the DVD in your own school communities on whatever day it is that you're watching them, that you become the kind of ambassadors, really, for LifeLink in your school. You think about how the 2 or 3 of you who are here, or the people who are watching this in their own schools, how you might get the rest of the school community enthused about all of this. So what is in these kits that we've provided you with? Well, first of all, there is some contact and information sheets. There are some contact and information sheets about our LifeLink agencies. There are some examples of the work of our LifeLink agencies. There's a link up on LifeLink Day poster or flyer, and there's a template for making the links. Now, I don't think they're that hard to make. Not sure that you'll need a template, but just in case any of you are a bit challenged in this area, there will be a template to teach you how to cut out a piece of paper and stick it together. So if you're not sure, have a look at the template. There'll also be a USB that you can slip into the laptops or the computers in school, and on that DVD, or that USB rather, will be a copy of the video that we've just watched this morning. There'll be copies of the LifeLink and LifeLink Day logos. There'll be photos of our LifeLink agencies at work, and there will be a special video presentation from our Emmaus community. You saw Brother Alan, who's in charge of Emmaus, talking about the Emmaus community. There's a special feature on the fantastic work that he does. We come now to a rather important moment. As you know, LifeLink Day has been going on for quite a few years, and every year Bishop Sproxton and I put our heads together with the help of a few other people, and we make some awards. They're called the Archbishop's Spirit Award, and what I want to do this morning is announce the winners of the Archbishop's Spirit Award for last year. Before I do that, though, it's important that I say that it's not based on which school raises the most money. It's based on which school demonstrates that they've really thrown themselves in with lots of enthusiasm to the whole spirit of LifeLink Day. Obviously, the money's important. We need the money to keep our agencies going. But what's more important to me and to Bishop Sproxton and to all of us who are involved in LifeLink is that you get excited about this mission that we have to care for other people rather than just ourselves. And when people in a school community really grab this and they get excited about it and they come up with all sorts of good ideas and everyone gets enthusiastic, that's what's the basis of the LifeLink Day Spirit Award, the Archbishop's Spirit Awards. So it goes to the school or the schools that demonstrate active support for my LifeLink Day initiative. It goes to the school that embraces the goals of LifeLink Day, not just to learn about the church's response to people in need, but to undertake some form of fundraising. It goes to the school that really does its best to help our students understand that we all have a responsibility to care for those in need. And it goes to the school that really is very successful, I guess we could say, in promoting this spirit of care and compassion and getting everyone in the school community to buy into that. On the screen in a moment, you're going to see the list of schools which have received the Archbishop's Spirit Award since it was first presented in 1999. Now, I wasn't the Archbishop in 1999. I became the Archbishop in 2012. So it was Archbishop Hickey who was originally involved in this. But there is the list of schools, some secondary schools, some primary schools, even a couple of years where there was no award presented. That's a bit sad, isn't it? But that won't be the case for 2014, and I'm sure it won't be the case for 2015. There would hardly be, in fact there probably isn't, a school in the Archdiocese of Perth that doesn't get involved in LifeLink Day. So in a sense, everybody deserves an award. But in presenting some special awards, it does allow Bishop Sproxton and I to acknowledge those special efforts of a few particular school communities. You'll notice that in 2012, also in 2011 and in 2013, we ended up giving 2 awards because we just couldn't separate a couple of schools, and that's also the case this year. But before I announce the 2 schools, one's a secondary school and one's a primary school, who knows, it might even be your primary school. Before I announce the winner for last year, I did just want to make a special mention of a couple of schools who were really in the running for the award, but just got pipped at the post by the 2 schools that have ended up being given the award. So I want to make a special mention of them because they did a fantastic job in 2014. One is St Gerard's Primary School, and I think St Gerard's is here this morning, yes? Where are they? Well done, congratulations to you. One was Pius X Catholic School. They are down the back, well done, congratulations. One was La Salle College, that's a secondary school. There aren't any La Salle students here, but there might be some future La Salle students here. In fact, I know there are because I spoke to a couple this morning. And the other is Holy Cross College in Ellenbrook. So congratulations to those 4 schools for the great effort that they put in to LifeLink Day last year. But now I get to announce the winners for 2014. We're not presenting the plaques today. Bishop Sproxton and I will come out to the schools and present the awards later on in the year. I think I'm going to have to announce the primary one first because that's the way it's going to appear on the screen. So the winner of the Archbishop's Spirit Award for 2014 amongst our primary schools is Our Lady's Assumption School in Dianella. And I know they're here, so why don't they stand up? Well done. You guys did a wonderful job last year, and of course now the pressure's on. You've got to try and win it again in 2015. And as you can see on the screen there, the winner from the secondary section was Trinity College in East Perth. Don't know if any people from the primary part of Trinity are here today, are they? Oh, you might as well stand up and take the credit as well. So, we're nearly at the end. You've been fantastic, so I don't want to keep you too long, and there's still the chance that you have to ask Bishop Sproxton and myself a few questions. So let me just say that last year, our Catholic schools, put them all together, raised, this is extraordinary, raised more than $90,000 for LifeLink Day. That's a fantastic result. And it's a testament both to your generosity, but also to that spirit of understanding about the need to reach out to others who are finding life a bit tough. So thank you very much for that. And on the basis of that, Bishop Sproxton and I, with the urging of Mr. Mendez, have decided to be a little bit bold and see whether or not we could set ourselves a target of $100,000. That's a lot of money. So it's going to require a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of commitment. But just think of the difference it will make to all of those people that we saw on the screen and all those other people who come to us for help. With that, I want to just conclude by simply officially launching. It's taken me a long time, hasn't it, to get to the actual official launch, but officially launching LifeLink Day for 2015, and to assure you of the gratitude of both myself and Bishop Sproxton, our gratitude, our admiration, and our blessing. So thank you very much. Best wishes to all of you. I'm really looking forward to getting those photos of these sophisticated things that you're all going to be making. And I look forward to, hopefully, also to hearing what a difference this has made just to your spirit in the school, that you feel like this has drawn the school community together, given you something to get behind, given you a project to really commit yourselves to. So thank you very much, everybody, and a special thanks for the way you've listened and followed everything that's happened this morning. Okay, I'm not sure if we've got an MC or whether I'm supposed to now announce that we're having the question and answer session.
That's right, I'll lead you in, Archbishop, if I may. So now's your opportunity to ask Bishop Sproxton and Archbishop Costello a question. It can be about LifeLink, it can be about LifeLink Day, it can be about faith, it can be about something personal. You can ask the Archbishop who he barracks for, because I know he likes to talk about that. So if you'd just like to stand and raise your hand, or raise your hand and then we'll come to you. We have one microphone over there and one here, and we'll begin. Bishop, if you'd perhaps like to grab your mic that's on the floor, and we'll get you to join His grace. So who'd like to ask the first question?
You can ask anything you like, and if it's just too embarrassing, then I just won't answer it. So.
In one word, what do you think LifeLink is?
In one word?
Yeah.
I'd say compassion.
Okay.
Is that okay? Oh, thank you. Good question to start with.
How long have you been Archbishop for, and what's your favourite thing about being Archbishop?
I've been Archbishop for 3 years, so I became Archbishop. I found out in late February of 2012, because before that I was an assistant bishop in Melbourne, and then I came over in March and was made the Archbishop in March. So that's how long, 3 years, just over 3 years. Now, I'll tell you what my favourite thing is, but I need to preface it by saying that it's the kind of thing you think I might feel obliged to say, because I happen to be here with a whole pile of young people. So I just need to explain that before I became a bishop, and even before I became a priest, I'd already made up my mind I wanted to be a teacher. So I was a teacher before I decided I'd also be a priest. I did teach in a primary school for a while, then I taught in secondary schools for quite a while. So I really like being with young people. It's what I chose to do with my life. And so for me, the chance to come to a thing like this, or we did something similar with the secondary school students earlier in the week, or to come out, as I will be, to some of your schools soon to meet some of you probably, who might be being confirmed later this year, to come out and meet people and be with people is probably the best thing that I get to do. I always go home feeling much better about my job than maybe I did on the way here. So that's the honest answer. I don't know about Bishop Sproxton. He's not the Archbishop, he's the auxiliary bishop, but he's probably got something favourite as well.
The work that I do is really to assist the Archbishop, and it means that in Perth here I get to do a lot of things that I know auxiliary bishops in other places don't get to do. And one of the roles that I have is to be the bishop who is responsible for the youth ministry in the diocese. So whenever we have gatherings like this, I really think it's really wonderful that we can get together to be with others who have similar experiences to us, you know, going through primary, having good teachers, having great schools, and then to be with young people as they go beyond primary school into secondary and then into parish youth groups, etc. So those sorts of things give me a great deal of life and give me a great deal of confidence in our young people. So like the Archbishop, I really enjoy this sort of work. I prefer going out into parishes because I was a parish priest for a number of years, and that also is a work that I really enjoy. So, yeah, thank you.
Do you know how LifeLink started?
I don't know how LifeLink started, so Bishop Sproxton, who's the chair of LifeLink, can probably answer that one.
Way back before we had LifeLink, we had a number of occasions in our parishes where we would be asking people to make donations to support some of the social service works that we had going at that time. And that would mean that almost every month there would be a special collection taken up, and we thought it was better just to bring it all together into one, and LifeLink was created so that we could not only approach people in parishes, but we could approach schools and we could approach other people in the community, knowing that LifeLink was the group of people who were there to do the fundraising to support those agencies, some of which that you've seen today. So it was just a way of making it work better.
I'm Ryan Bunchooten. I'm from Whitford's Catholic, and I was wondering, when did LifeLink start up?
Bishop Don?
1994, I think it was, yes. So Archbishop Hickey became Archbishop in 1991, and he took a little while just to see how things were going around the diocese, and he saw that there was a need for us to structure things a bit differently with our welfare services and the fundraising for them. And this young man wasn't being rude, Archbishop. He's damaged his ankle and he's on crutches, so that's why he remains seating. I'll just make sure they knew. Yes?
Your Grace, if there's a person that looks ordinary but they're in desperate need of help and they don't ask anyone for help? How do you know to reach out to them?
Look, that's a really good question, and I suppose the first thing I'd say is often we won't know. Often we won't know. And that's a shame, because it means that someone who might really be in need goes without the help that they do need. So I think that I'd probably want to say two things to that. And I think the first thing is that when we do see people who are in need and who obviously are looking for help, then we really should do our best to respond, you know. But as I said earlier, for that to happen, you've got to have a heart that wants to respond. We all see people in need. I'm sure we all pass them in the streets, in our suburbs, in the city. And sometimes we get a bit uncomfortable and maybe we cross the road and go down the other side so we don't have to encounter them, or we sort of walk quickly past so that they don't stop us or whatever. We've got to sort of let our hearts loosen up a little bit. And that's something to pray about too, because we can't do it on our own. So we actually need to pray that the Lord will sort of soften our hearts a bit. I think that's an important thing. But I do think that while it's true that there'll be some people who are in need who never let on, there are agencies like many of the ones we've got where people can come, in a sense, a bit anonymously and seek some help. And so where they might not sort of display it on the street, they might be willing to go to an agency where they won't get asked too many questions, they'll just get the help they need. And that's why, as well as each of us individually being ready to help when we see a need, I think supporting things like our LifeLink agencies is another way. Because where we might realise or might not realise that someone needs help, they might be able to get help somewhere else. So that would be one answer that I'd give. And the only other little thing I'd say is I think we'll be surprised that if we do genuinely ask the Lord to loosen us up a bit, to soften our hearts a bit, we might find ourselves noticing a bit more than we do now those subtle ways in which people are asking for help. But that's a great question. Thank you.
There's one in the front there.
Have you ever met the Pope?
Well, I'll answer, and then Bishop Don might like to answer as well. I haven't met Pope Francis yet, but I'll let you in on a little secret as long as you promise not to tell anybody else. And that is that in 2 weeks' time, I have to go to Rome, and I've been in touch with Cardinal Pell, who used to be the Archbishop of Sydney and who now works in Rome and is very close to the Pope. So I've been in touch with Cardinal Pell to see if he can pull a few strings so I can get to meet the Pope. But I did meet Pope Benedict, I think probably 3 times, and then Pope John Paul II, who none of you would have, he was before your time, but I also met him. So I've been very lucky. I've even had lunch with a Pope once, so how's that? That's pretty good. But Bishop Don might like to talk about the popes that he's met as well.
Well, the first one was Pope John Paul II when he came to Perth back in 1986, and he was very strong and very fit and very engaged in the local church here. He was very interested to be here and to understand the church here, and gave a lot of wonderful talks when he went around Australia. Then I met Pope Benedict on 2 occasions, and then Pope Francis about a year and a half ago when I attended a conference on health in Rome. So it was very, very special.
You beat the Archbishop, Bishop.
Not a competition.
It's not a competition, but he's still winning.
What's the greatest challenge you've ever faced?
Oh, the greatest challenge I've ever faced. I think the greatest personal challenge I ever faced was when I was first asked if I would become a bishop. Because I don't know if you realise it or not, but you can't apply for the job of being a bishop. They don't advertise and people put in an application. In the end, it's the Pope who asks somebody to be a bishop. Not personally, but through other people. And when there's a need for a new bishop, say in a place like Perth, then there's a process that goes on, and it's partly a secret process. You know, finding out, well, maybe Tim Costello might be worth thinking about, or maybe Don Sproxton might be worth thinking about, or whatever. So all these names emerge, you know. And then there's all of this consultation goes on, so the names get sent out to a whole lot of people. What do you think? Would this person be any good? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? So all of that goes on. But you don't know that you're being thought about at all. So I remember the day that I found out that the Pope wanted me to become a bishop, and it was when I was still in Melbourne. And I was in a big shopping centre in Melbourne, a little bit like the Galleria or Morley Shopping Centre or one of those places. I was in a big shopping centre in Melbourne. Some of the teachers here, or even some of the students, might have been to this shopping centre if you've been to Melbourne, the Chadstone Shopping Centre. It's one of the biggest in Australia. I was there and I was on my way to get a cup of coffee in the food court. And it was the end of the day. And I thought, I better check my phone, because I hadn't checked my mobile phone all day. So this was about 5:15. And I checked the phone, and there was a message for me that had come in about 10 o'clock in the morning. And it was a message from a man called the Apostolic Nuncio. So he's an archbishop, and he's like the Pope's ambassador here in Australia, lives in Canberra. So with just this message on the phone, Father Costello, it's the Apostolic Nuncio here. Could you please ring me when you get this message? And you know what my first thought was? I must be in trouble. I must have done something wrong. So I was trying to work out what I'd done wrong. But anyway, so I rang him. And in fact, because the shopping centre was very busy, I had to go down to the underground car park where it was a bit quieter. So I'm in the underground car park. I ring up the office in Canberra, tell the secretary who I am. She puts me through to the Archbishop, and he says, Father Costello, I've got some news for you. And I said, oh. And he said, the Holy Father has appointed you as a bishop in Melbourne. Just like that. Not the Holy Father would like to ask you, or the Holy Father is thinking about this, just the Holy Father has appointed you as a bishop in Melbourne. And you can tell that when I start talking, it's hard to stop me. But on this occasion, I didn't know what to say. I didn't say anything. So there's just dead silence. And then the Archbishop on the other end of the phone says, Father, are you still there? I said, yes. And he said, you can say no, but the Holy Father certainly hopes that you'll say yes. So that's called putting a bit of pressure on you. And I'm kind of making a joke out of it, but it was the biggest challenge in my life because I'd never thought of myself as someone who might become a bishop. I didn't think that I was particularly well equipped to be a bishop. And so I had that big decision to make, whether I would say yes or whether I'd say no. And I think, trying to work my way through that and decide whether or not I should say yes or whether I should decline, that was probably the biggest challenge I've ever faced. And in fact, I went to see a friend. You're not normally supposed to talk about these things, but the Archbishop said, look, it'd be okay if you spoke to a certain person who'd known me ever since I was a young man. And I remember going through all the list of reasons why I didn't think I should say yes. I won't tell you what they are. And every time I said something, he would say, well, Tim, that's right. I agree with that. So I listed about half a dozen reasons why I should say no, and he'd say, that's true, that's true, that's true. So I'd sort of made up my mind to say no. And then he said, but on the other hand, and then he gave me all the reasons why he thought I should say yes. So I'd sort of tossed it up and down. I'm sure Bishop Sproxton had exactly the same experience. It's such a big thing to be asked to do. It changes your life completely. So that was the biggest challenge. Whether I made the right decision, that's for you guys to decide, not me. But that was probably the biggest challenge. So thank you for asking.
Hello, Your Grace, and my name's Torrin from Holy Spirit School. I just thought it would be a good idea for all the different schools to share their ideas for fundraising.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good idea. We'd have to think, wouldn't we, about how we might go about that. Because Bishop Don is the chair of LifeLink, I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that, but...
I think one of the things that we do, and we try to do it quite well, is to look around when we go to schools. The Archbishop and I visit the schools when we do parish visitations, and we ask, how things are going, and sometimes we ask, and LifeLink, what sort of things have you done this year to support LifeLink? And so we collect a little bit of a memory of those schools and what they've done. Mr. Mendez does a similar sort of work, and the members of the LifeLink committee are also thinking about and finding out, what schools are doing, some good ideas. So the idea to make this chain has come from a school. So we're hoping that some other schools will come up with some other ideas that will help the students really engage with the LifeLink in their own school.
If you had to choose a motto for all the schools, not just for LifeLink but for all the other donations that we do, what would it be?
Oh gosh, have to choose a motto for this. Do you mean just for fundraising or? Okay. That's a really tough question, so I probably need to think about it. And normally when I think of a motto, probably because I'm a bishop, I tend to think of something that I can get out of the scriptures, out of the Bible. So it's the first thing that pops into my mind, it's too long, so we'd have to think of a way of shortening it. But there's a great line in one of the letters of St. John in the New Testament where it says something like this. How can you say, this is too long for a motto, but you get the idea. How can you say you love God whom you can't see if you don't love your brother and sister whom you can see? Now, you might want to think about that. How could we reduce that to a catchy little motto? But it's a great thing to think about. So that would be the first thing that would pop into my mind.
I like what you said this morning, Archbishop. Seeing eyes, listening ears,
yes.
loving heart.
Yes. Well, that
says it all.
Yep. I'm happy to hand that over to everybody.
That
seeing eyes, listening ears, loving heart. That's good.
That'll be mine in about a week.
Yeah, good.
I'm terribly sorry, but we are going to have to end it there.
Oh, okay.
Because we have a delicious morning tea to serve you all before you go back to your schools. So I'll pass over to Principal DiCarlo to wind up proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Brett. Thank you, Archbishop Costello. Thank you very much, special guests. Our apology from our parish priest, Father Aloysius. He has arrived, so thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you over at the parish centre. Thank you, Father. Can I just thank you all for attending today, and I'll thank you for your participation. Those questions that you asked were fantastic, so well done to the students. I want to pay a special thank you to some of my own staff, helping Brett and all the others with setting up today. My groundsman Vince spent a lot of time helping. My two assistant principals, Renee Butler and Tracy Hill, has spent a lot of work coordinating with Brett about today. So thank you very much to them. I hope that you got a lot out of today. It was a fantastic idea. I'd like to wish both our Archbishop and Bishop Don all the very best for LifeLink this year. I think the aim of 100,000, I'm pretty sure that should be able to be achieved. I think today's idea and with the secondaries, we'll all go back with that encouragement to support LifeLink as best we can. No doubt we will, and so all the best. Thanks again, everyone, and God bless. Thank you.